It was just another quiet day over the Pacific Ocean when a routine aerial patrol spotted something strange floating in the distance. A large cargo vessel, drifting aimlessly, silent, and off course. At first glance, it looked like the crew might be in trouble. Maybe a mechanical failure. Maybe a call for help that never went through. But what rescuers found when they boarded the ship was nothing short of terrifying. No crew, no signs of life, no distress signal ever sent, and no clue where the people had gone. This wasn't a capsized boat or a sunken wreck. This was a fully functional ship, in perfect working order, completely abandoned in the middle of the ocean. This is the chilling, true story of one of the most disturbing unsolved maritime cases in modern history, the ghost ship with no crew. In April 2006, an Australian Coast Guard surveillance flight noticed something odd. A 55-meter cargo vessel called the MV Joyita had been reported missing 5 days earlier. But here it was, floating silently hundreds of kilometers from where it should have been. No one had heard from the ship since it departed from port. There had been no communication, no mayday, and no alerts. When the rescue team arrived by boat and boarded the vessel, the first thing they noticed was how eerily normal everything looked. The ship was not damaged. It hadn't sunk or been struck by a storm. The hull was intact. The food supplies were untouched. Even coffee mugs were still sitting on tables, as if the crew had just stepped away for a moment. But they were gone. All of them. Inside, it felt like time had simply stopped. The captain's quarters were undisturbed. The engine room was in working condition, though strangely, the engine itself was turned off. The ship's logbook had been left open, and the final entry was just 3 days old. That entry read, "Unusual vibrations heard below deck. Possible interference. Investigating." That was the last anyone ever heard from the crew. Even stranger, the emergency radio was tuned to distress frequency, but no call for help had ever been recorded. No messages had been sent. It was as if something had interrupted the crew mid-action, and they never came back. To make things worse, none of the life rafts were found. It appeared as if the crew had abandoned ship, but if so, why? There was no fire, no flooding, and no obvious danger. As news of the ghost ship spread, so did the theories. Some believed it was an act of piracy. Perhaps the crew had been kidnapped, the ship left behind. But nothing was missing. No valuable cargo was looted. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no broken equipment. And pirates typically don't leave behind functioning ships with all systems untouched. Another theory suggested a mutiny, that maybe the crew turned against the captain and fled. But again, why would they flee into open sea in life rafts, leaving behind food, shelter, and working equipment? A few maritime experts speculated a carbon monoxide leak could have caused hallucinations, paranoia, and irrational decisions. But tests on the engine room found no such gas buildup. And if it were poison, where were the bodies? More fringe theories suggested that the ship may have crossed into an oceanic dead zone, an area of unknown electromagnetic anomalies where navigation fails and human behavior becomes erratic. But there's no scientific proof such zones exist. And then, there were the paranormal theories. It didn't take long for whispers to grow. Sailors are a superstitious bunch, and soon people were calling it a cursed ship. Stories emerged of crew members feeling watched, of hearing footsteps at night, of strange shadows on the deck during previous voyages. In fact, the Joyita had a history of bad luck. It had changed owners multiple times, survived collisions, and even caught fire once in the 1950s, only to be restored and sent back out to sea. Some believed it was cursed from the start. One former sailor who worked briefly on the ship years before claimed in an old interview, "That ship was never right. You'd hear tapping sounds at night, metal creaking like footsteps. But no one was there. I got off after one voyage, never looked back." And while those stories may sound like legends, the truth is, something drove an entire crew to vanish silently, without warning, and that truth remains unknown. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered a few unsettling clues. A message was found scratched into a metal wall inside the kitchen area. It read, "It's below us." No one knows who carved it or what it meant. Was it a warning? A final message? A hallucination? In one of the crew cabins, a camcorder was found with no battery. The last photo saved on the internal memory showed the deck completely empty, except for a strange, elongated shadow in the distance. It didn't match the silhouette of any known crew member. Some said it looked distorted, inhuman. Nothing ever came of the footage. The image remains locked in a classified case file. The MV Joyita was eventually towed back to shore. The case was quietly closed due to lack of evidence. With no signs of foul play, no physical remains, and no answers, the ship was sold once again, repainted, and reused under a different name. But those who know its story never forgot. Because ships don't just lose their entire crew. People don't vanish into thin air. And emergency systems don't fail all at once without a trace. To this day, the fate of the Joyita's crew remains one of the most baffling and disturbing maritime mysteries ever recorded. So the question remains, what really happened on board that ship? Was it a tragedy we simply failed to understand? Was it something darker, buried beneath the ocean's surface, or was it something we're not meant to explain? Whatever it was, the ocean knows, and it isn't talking.